The federal government gun buyback program has faced some blowback, but will it actually make Canadians safer? Edward Burlew is a lawyer who specializes in firearm cases, and Irvin Waller is professor emeritus at the University of Ottawa and author of The Science and Secrets of Ending Violent Crime. Great to have you in studio, Edward.
Thank you.
Great to have you on the line, Irvin. Edward, I'm going to start with you. The federal firearms buyback program is nearing its deadline for registration. It's 31st of March. What do you believe the program will accomplish?
It's not going to accomplish much. It hasn't so far. And by the way, you used the word registration. It's not. It's called declaration.
Okay.
What that means in very plain terms is I, as a gun owner, would declare I have this gun, and the other gun. Some of the guns are already were registered. They know about those. Some may be the one that the minister talks about, which is the Ruger Mini 14, which was always non-restricted. They wouldn't know I have that unless I say I have it. I put on my declaration. The declaration is not a contract. It does not obligate the government to pay me anything for that gun, no matter where or how it's surrendered.
Now, the government has said that they hope that this program results in fewer mass casualty events. Does this program do that at all?
I would say no, because for the last 6 years, since May of 2020, when they did the big grab, or the big announcement that made the AR-15s and another about 1,500 actually guns, types of guns and models prohibited, they haven't been used in mass casualty in Canada. And it's significant to look at the Canadian situation of licensing, compliance, regulation, and constant eligibility, because we have very strict and demanding laws that govern our ownership of handguns, and all guns, in fact.
Irvin, I want to get you in on here. Let's talk about the declaration. What do you believe that the program will accomplish, given what Edward has said?
Well, it looks as if it will eventually bring in, who knows, 50, 60,000 guns, assault-style guns. My interest is very much what policies will actually reduce the number of homicides. And it's very clear that this action, really going back so many years and inspired a little bit by Australia, is not going to save a lot of lives.
All right, with that being said, Edward, it seems like a drop in the bucket when we talk about exactly, how many guns are actually going to be declared here. You, as a lawyer, you represent the Canadian Shooting Sports Association.
That's correct.
I'm hoping, and among other groups, and I want to help us understand, how is the buyback program being viewed among legal gun owners at the moment?
Well, we do have some that are participating by doing the declaration.
Okay.
But by and large, they've developed a wait-and-see look, because they understand that there's a limited amount of funds and there's no guarantee they'll get paid. That's, of course, a big motivation. And the other one is that they say it's voluntary. Well, right now it is voluntary to make a declaration. But come the end of October
31st, yeah.
Then it's no longer voluntary, and there's a lot of risk. Two things have developed. Number one, the response to the voluntary declaration expiring on today has been less than robust. And now the Supreme Court will be hearing the appeal of the challenge that may defeat the order in council. And that may be argued in September.
So not very straightforward, a bit confusing for some gun owners who might be wondering where they stand in the law.
Very much so, very confusing. People are seeking direction, and we're not really getting that. We're getting the same statements, which still are the law today. There's no doubt about it. But things may change. We don't know. And people are looking at these maybes.
Okay. Irvin, much of the focus, as you mentioned, firearms like AR-15s. Critics often say that that's a weapon designed really for military purposes. So I am curious, from that perspective, do you think taking them out of civilian circulation would make things safer?
Well, yes, but very marginally. We know that AR-15s are used significantly in mass shootings in the United States. You have to remember that mass shootings still only account for 1 or 2% of all homicides in the United States. We also know that mass shootings have been increasing over the last decade in the United States. So yes, potentially there may be more mass shootings in Canada involving assault-style weapons, but it's hypothetical and I think unlikely to lead to a lot of mass shootings. There are much better things that they could be doing to reduce deaths from guns in Canada, and they're not doing them.
Edward, I'll get your take on that.
Well, I agree, and I'd like to work with him with Professor Waller to work on a strategy. One of the things we've been pushing for about 3 years, and me about 10 years, through this Canadian Shooting Sports Association, is to develop better police powers. For instance, when a person is found guilty of something, some act of violence, it could just be an assault, they're given a prohibition order by the court. Prohibition order means you can't touch a gun.
Right.
You can't pick one up. And that goes sometimes lifetime, mostly 5 to 10 years. But those people don't have to say where they live. They're not subject to police inspection. They don't have any reporting. We would like that changed. We would like that, and this is the majority of gun owners like this. And when I talk to the police about it, in courts and at other sessions, they say, please do it. And we would very much like to see this done so that those people with prohibition orders can be traced, they can be held accountable, because as gun owners, we are. Just give them the same sanction of reporting that we are subject to. And the courts have found that the sanctions we are facing are constitutional. We didn't do anything wrong. And we're not saying loosen them to us, but put other people under them. That will make a significant difference, because you can see it in the reports that we see every day. So-and-so was arrested, he had a gun, he was already under a probation or a prohibition order. That would go a long way.
I want to take a step back here. Help me understand. There are probably going to be some viewers and listeners who are wondering, why do people need to have an AR-15?
Well, first of all, let me define something. After that highly tragic event, the Canadian government immediately changed the law about cartridge magazines. Semi-automatic rifles were restricted to 5 rounds, period.
That's it. Doesn't matter.
That's it. So the AR-15s can only shoot 5 rounds legally. That's all you can have. It's used primarily in competition sports. And those competition sports are sanctioned through Canadian bodies, international bodies, which are actually larger bodies than the Olympic Foundation. And the first thing all those sanctioning bodies do, be it IDPA or IPSC, are give increased safety rules. And you have to have accuracy, and you have to have safety rules that you learn on top of the other safety rules that exist. And that's the reason why people have that, and they participate in that way. That's what they're used for in Canada.
I want to get Irvin in here, but I do have a quick follow-up here. You mentioned rules. And one of the things that I have to ask is, well, criminals don't follow a lot of those rules.
None of them. They don't. They flaunt them. They absolutely flaunt them.
Is there a fear that if people aren't following the rules, then does this open up concerns and issues that, if we put in these policies that you had mentioned, will people who are taking advantage of our criminals will continue to do what they do?
Well, I think a criminal will continue to flaunt rules, but it gives the police access to where they are, to their homes, to their cars, and to checking up on them. And that's very important because these are the people who have been found to be violent or be violent with guns. And they need to be watched. They need to have sanctions.
All right, very good. I want to get Irvin in on here. Unlike the AR-15s, handguns are often used, as you mentioned, in crimes in Canada, but they are now controlled by legislation. Initially with a handgun freeze in 2022, then became law in 2023. Does the focus on handguns better address the root causes of some of the gun violence that we're seeing?
Absolutely not. And of course, the way that the government did it, they actually expanded the number of people who were owning handguns. But I don't think the legal owners of handguns are the major issue in urban areas. So in urban areas, we know a lot about how to stop that handgun violence before it happens. South of the border, there has been dramatic changes in handgun homicides, and really brought about not by handgun controls, but by tackling the causes and risk factors that lead to young men using these guns.
Edward, I'm going to get your take on here, but I do want to get an understanding of what is working and what is not. Canada's gun control framework includes licensing, storage, and enforcement rules. Where is it succeeding? Where is it falling short?
Well, it's succeeding in the training, the mandatory training, in the control by storage, transport, where we can shoot. It's being successful. It's also being successful in mental health issues. A lot of what I do is counseling, arranging counseling, and working with people who've had problems psychologically, and then police get their guns. We have tremendously strong laws about that, and instantaneous police response to any type of suicide threat or threat of harm to others, and that's been built into the law for at least 35 years. So I fully agree with the professor here that there are other things to do. One of the things I would really like to see, and when I talk with other people, we would like to see our prime minister go down and talk with the president of the United States and say, stop the flow of illegal handguns into Canada. Do all you can. That's what's created this epidemic of handgun violence. The statistics on Toronto are that 96% of the crime guns that they recover have been smuggled, and that has to be stopped.
Now, the province last week in their budget announced some money towards securing the border, dealing with sort of gaps in enforcement there, to the tune of about $32 million for next year. Part of that would be going to that. Is that a good sign?
It's a very good sign, but CBSA is federal.
Yep.
Here's an interesting fact: the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which is down in the United States, they are the gun control people in the United States. They everything about them. They have offices in Toronto, in headquarters in Toronto, and at Pearson Airport, and we work our people in Canada who are in enforcement. They work with them as one unit.
Okay.
And that's very good. And I'm glad to see that. And that's existed for decades.
Irvin, both of you had mentioned Public Safety Canada. So I'm going to want to put you guys in their shoes. If you were in charge of Public Safety Canada, Irvin, what's the first thing that you would do to prevent a tragedy from happening in the future when it comes to using guns?
I would appoint a deputy minister to lead violence reduction strategies across Canada. And that person would have a small team of people who are knowledgeable on how you tackle the risk factors, what sorts of programs that have worked. And they would help cities and regional government and indigenous groups across the country do the planning that is necessary to get effective programs implemented. And that is basically what the UK did on a national basis, and it's what the US did on a less national basis. Today, there are over 100 cities in the US that have a planning group like that, and we effectively don't have one. And then you have to invest the funds. It's maybe the equivalent of 5% of what was spending federally on reaction to crime in getting those programs implemented. We are today all in Ontario. In 2019, the Ontario government changed their Police Act to call it the Community Safety and Police Act. Section 251 and around there talk about the type of planning group that is now spread across the UK and has spread across many cities in the US. But legislation is not enough. You have to actually do the things that bring this legislation to life. The Mass Casualty Commission, the largest mass casualty in recent Canadian history, yes, it recommended some measures relating to safety in relation to guns, but it also recommended exactly what I'm talking about, the community safety strategies that are the secret to actually getting significant reductions in homicides across Canada.
All right, just very quickly, you get the last word here, Edward, but looking forward, what's the most realistic path to reducing firearm violence while respecting legal ownership?
I would say this. I'd say that the federal government needs to appoint the 50-plus judges into the Superior Court of Ontario, which has been in a deficit, having only about 150 judges and 200 are needed, to then give us the judicial resources and to create a fast-track court to deal with gun violence, with weapons violence offenses, so that they don't take 2 years, 3 years to get through court, so that they can be brought to court within months. And that as well, the judges would respect the grounds for release right now, which is the tertiary ground, which is that the release of a person after violence, after gun violence, weapons violence, if they're released, that brings justice into disrepute, because certainly people are feeling that, the press is saying that, police are saying that, politicians are saying that. That tertiary ground needs to have more respect, and we need to, and once the gangsters, those people who are prone to this type of violence, whether gangs or individuals, realize that they will be dealt with quickly, that will be another deterrence, as well as what Professor Waller has said, which is tremendously useful.
All right, we are going to have to leave it there. Edward, Irvin, I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you.